Namaste everybody. So today we're going to be talking about the narcissist and your spiritual awakening. If you love this content, please don't forget to click the subscribe button and the notification bell. This way, every time I upload a new video, you'll be the first to know. So I've wanted to discuss this idea of dating a narcissist or loving a narcissist and a spiritual awakening for a long time. And I think it's an important topic because there's so much that we can learn from dating a narcissist or ending a relationship with a narcissist. And understanding how it relates to what many of us will refer to as a spiritual awakening. And so a spiritual awakening means a lot of things, a lot of different things to a lot of different people. And in my opinion, a spiritual awakening is an event or an experience, or maybe even a series of events or experiences throughout someone's lifetime that allows them to confront their ego, that allows them to confront illusions, that allows them to merge more deeply with oneself or one's true self, which means that there must be a dissolution of ego. I think it's important that we all recognize this idea that ego doesn't see things clearly. Ego sees things through the eyes of our wounds, the eyes of our trauma. Ego is not the awakened parts of ourselves. And to experience a spiritual awakening is to become aware of the reality that I have an ego, that I am reactive, that I am codependent, that I seek validation, that I am a narcissist, that I have whatever experiences that I am currently experiencing. So for a codependent to experience a spiritual awakening, the first part of that experience might be, wow, I'm codependent and I didn't even know it. For someone who has an addiction to alcohol, part of their spiritual awakening would be, I know I have a problem with alcohol. If a narcissist were to experience a spiritual awakening, they would have to recognize that they are narcissistic, that they walk around feeling entitled, that they think that they're better than everyone else. They require to be admired. So in order for someone who is highly narcissistic to experience a spiritual awakening, there would have to be this step where awareness has been evoked. You cannot have a spiritual awakening without recognizing that you were, in the moment before, a little asleep or less aware. All human beings walk around on planet Earth unaware. They are unaware until the moment they are more aware, and until the moment they realize that they were once unaware. Spiritual awakenings happen over a lifetime. And what we're trying to do is, as we evolve as a species and as we expand our consciousness, we're trying to be less ego-driven, more self-aware, more self-accountable, more self-responsible. There becomes an awareness that I have an ego, that my mind is run by pain versus pleasure, and that I will live a reactive life until I gain some awareness and control over my ego. So what is the benefit of, or what can we draw from? Because a lot of people will find the idea that, oh, we're supposed to be benefiting from narcissists a little offensive, and I get it. Because a narcissist, depending on what type of narcissist you're dealing with, from the mundane, garden variety, annoying, self-absorbed person in your group who talks over everyone, who cuts people off, who thinks the world revolves around them, to the more malevolent or malignant narcissist who can cause true harm in someone's life and really destroy someone's life on every level, and even resort to physical violence and other sorts of violence without really thinking much about the other person and without thinking about how their actions are affecting other people, and either not caring at all, or they actually think that there are people who deserve to be treated abusively. It really does depend on what type of a narcissist we're dealing with. And I do believe that when we're talking about a predator, we are all at risk, because a predator will take advantage of anyone. And the more empathy that you have, the more you want to give other people a chance, the more you believe in people, the more you see the world as, half the glass is half full versus half empty, it might be difficult for you to think that there are people in this world that you shouldn't trust right off the bat. It might be difficult for you to accept that you should trust your intuition when you're around someone and you get the heebie-jeebies. You don't feel good around this person. You're getting a negative vibe. There are lots of people on planet Earth that talk themselves out of that feeling. So they talk themselves out of that intuition and unfortunately can end up in trouble when they find themselves in a relationship with someone who has exploited that kindness. Over time, there's gaslighting, there's projection, there's triangulation, there becomes blaming, there becomes devaluing and blaming the victim for why they are being devalued, and we have a trauma bond. And so this unsuspecting, kind person who grew up in a very nice home, who believed in people, is now stuck in a trauma bonded situation. And so when I say things like, what can we gain, what value can we gain from dealing with a narcissist, I can understand why someone might be offended by this idea that we should be considering, oh, what can we gain at all from a narcissistic relationship? I don't want to give anyone the impression that any of us should be doing backflips because we've ended a relationship with a narcissist and woohoo, there's so much value in it. That's not what I'm saying. What I am trying to do is convey this idea that narcissists will offer many of us contrast. And in the relationship with a narcissist, which is an illusion, everything about being in a relationship with a narcissist is an illusion. And having a spiritual awakening is about awakening from the world of illusions. And so when you think about being in a relationship with someone with high narcissistic traits, and you consider what it means to have a spiritual awakening, you can see that painful experiences, such as being with a narcissist, can offer you the opportunity to awaken from an illusionary world. If you have loved a narcissist or worked with a narcissist, or if your parents were narcissistic, then you recognize, or at least maybe you're learning, that a narcissist lives in a world inside their head that is far from reality. They see themselves far greater than they actually are. They feel entitled. You date a narcissist and they're really boggled by the fact that you're not kissing their feet, that you're not agreeing with everything that they say. They're black and white thinkers, so you're not seen as a 3D autonomous human being in their mind. They idealize you, not for you. They idealize you for them. When a narcissist meets you, they have to idealize you. They have to think you're awesome. They have to put you on a pedestal. They have to, because why else would they be with someone who is fantastic? And the more fantastic you are in their head, the more value they have, because this fantastic person wants them. And the minute you expect them to meet you halfway, or the minute you suggest that they aren't perfect, you're knocked off that pedestal. And to save themselves, to save the image that they hold of themselves, they have to blame you. They have to devalue you. See, you really weren't that great. There's really something really defective about you. This is to discredit anything that you've said about them that goes against their idea of themselves in their head. So it's important that we understand that a spiritual awakening is about waking up from an illusion. It's about waking up to this idea that we weren't really living one with ourselves, connected to ourselves in a healthy way, that we were living out programs and patterns, familial patterns, cultural patterns. We were taking on the roles that were given to us and trying to fit into a society or a culture or even a gender, trying to fit in and trying to be what we think others or society or our family or even a narcissist wanted us to be. So we weren't our true self. We haven't found a way out of that. And when you end a relationship with a narcissist, or you're beginning to understand you're in a relationship with a narcissist, you're waking up. And there's a fantastic opportunity here to use the benefit of the contrast of living inside this illusionary world to really promote your spiritual awakening, or to advance your spiritual awakening. What happens lots of times is that once we realize that we've been in a relationship with a narcissist, we have all this contrast and we ask ourselves, oh my God, how did I get here? What happened? Some of us will get stuck feeling like a victim. And you feel like a victim because you were a victim. But many of us will get stuck feeling like a victim and we're unable to move past it. And that's a very dangerous place to be. Because when we feel like a victim, we are in the pain of the contrast that really has the potential to motivate us and to push us forward. And rather than push us forward, we stay stuck in feeling like a victim. And in the metaphysical world, we end up attracting people who victimize us again. So our vulnerabilities are still there. Our wounds are still there. They are even more painful now because someone has ripped the scab off. And now we're even more susceptible to someone who can be abusive. The next time around, the person might be a covert narcissist versus an overt narcissist or a grandiose narcissist. We might not even see it coming. And that's a real thing that happens. We end up attracting the same type of a relationship from our core wounds. And so I think there's a potential for us to learn, especially those of you who follow my work and you understand what narcissism is. You understand codependency, and healing from codependency is a spiritual awakening. You are waking up from the illusion of childhood programming. All children are in a theta brainwave state up until the age of 7. You are in a hypnotic brainwave state. That means your parents, your caretakers, your foster care parents, wherever you grew up, they were your hypnotists. Your culture hypnotized you to believe in what your culture, your traditions are. You were given these roles. And when you are healing from codependency, it's an opportunity to look within. It's an opportunity to figure out and observe what are these childhood programs and do they fit the inner critic and all of the rules that have been downloaded into the narrative of my inner critic. Are they my rules? Or are they my mother's rules? Are they my religion's rules? Are they grandma's rules? Whose rules are they? And in the awakening process, healing from codependency is an opportunity to live above the veil of consciousness, to live outside of the or above the subconscious paradigm. And all of us are born into a subconscious paradigm. All men and all women are born asleep. Babies are born into a dream state. That's why a newborn sleeps so much. And children are in a theta brainwave state until about the age of 7. And things start to change after that. But we take all of our childhood programming into our adult lives. So if we were treated like little princesses and princes up until the age of 7, we're really boggled by this idea that not everybody's treating us like a princess or a prince when we get older. So we have this sense of entitlement. On the flip side, if we're treated like we have no value, then we become adults who don't feel like we have intrinsic value. We become codependent. We have anxious attachment styles. We might cling, then worry about being enmeshed and push people away. So it's important that we realize that our childhood experiences created these subconscious patterns and programs. It's an illusionary life. And so a spiritual awakening is coming into contact, conscious contact, with this idea that we have been asleep, that we haven't been living in true reality. What is true reality? True reality is living out your true self, coming into oneness with your true self, and deeper, coming into oneness with all that is, seeing yourself as an extension of the universe, and understanding your place in the universe is very important. We're all important. We're all part of this process of creation, and we're all here to find out what it is that we're meant to do. What is it about us that is unique, that is meant to be drawn out and experienced? How many of us feel frustrated by the fact that we're not living out our dreams? How many of us are living inside worlds and realities and relationships that don't fit us, but we don't know how to get out? It's literally like being stuck underwater and you want to get above the water and you feel like you should be living above the water, like Ariel, you know, the Disney movie Ariel, the mermaid. She lives under the sea, but she wants to live on land. She feels a calling to live on land and to grow legs and to experience above the veil living. And so that's what it feels like to be codependent. That's what it feels like sometimes to be inside a narcissistic relationship. You feel trapped and you don't know how to get out. The difference between someone who is codependent and narcissistic is a narcissist thinks that this is completely normal. And so their illusionary world is comfortable for them. Living below the sea is where they want to be. And what they want to do is drag people into this underwater experience. And they're angry and they're frustrated when people don't agree with them, when people don't play by their rules. And they will quickly devalue someone. If they can't control you and force you into submission, they devalue you and they look for another target. Whereas someone who is codependent does not want to live underwater once they awaken to this idea that I've been living below the veil of consciousness. I've been stuck inside this narcissistic relationship and now I want out. So someone who has codependency or has codependency traits has the potential to change. But unfortunately, research is proving to us or reveals that most narcissists don't want to change. They don't think there's anything wrong with them. So they'll discredit you. Now, what happens in a spiritual awakening when we have a relationship with a narcissist, we're understanding that this was an illusionary world, that I was not a 3D autonomous human being in this relationship. I was a means to an end. I was a thing. I was here just to make him comfortable, or I was here just to adore her, just to fan her, just to tell her how beautiful she was, just to take care of her, just to pay for everything. That's why I was here. If you're dealing with a narcissistic woman, this is someone who needs to dominate you, very domineering. She wants you to adore her. She wants you to tell her how amazing she is. And she's confused when you are not doing these things. And she's baffled by this idea that you're not bending to her will. And as long as you put your shoes where she wants you to put them, and as long as you validate her with the intensity that she wants you to validate her, as long as you go along with everything that she says, you're good. You're good, as long as you live in her world. If you're dealing with a narcissistic man who's grandiose, as long as you keep telling him how gorgeous he is and that he's the strongest, he's the most intelligent, as long as you acquiesce, as long as you anticipate his needs, as long as you don't challenge him too much, then he'll keep you around. And as you begin to awaken and you realize this is bonkers, this is not reality, and I myself have disowned myself for the sake of this false reality, it's a very topsy-turvy experience because you literally feel like nothing is real. And unfortunately, a lot of people will get stuck at that point where I'm awakening and oh my gosh, I've been abused, right, by the narcissist, and or oh my gosh, I'm codependent because of childhood emotional neglect and my parents suck and it's all their fault. So we can get stuck there, which is not what we want to do. It's not healthy. What you want to do is in these moments when you are recognizing that this is an illusionary world, and maybe you were unaware that you were living in an illusionary world, seeking the validation of other people, acquiescing to other people, subjugating your needs for the sake of other people, living in fear of being your true self. Why? Because you know that when you spoke up, there were negative consequences as a child. So your brain is only trying to keep you safe. So if you learned in childhood that when you had a need or you expressed yourself, you were abandoned or you were ridiculed, then your brain is just trying to keep you safe. Your brain is hearing you say, oh, I won't speak up because they might abandon me. So your mind just follows. So whatever you feel, whatever you believe, your mind is just going to try to keep you safe. And that's why awareness is so important. Recognizing the holes in the wall. I say it all the time. You cannot fix a hole in the wall that you cannot see. If you grew up in a home where your family didn't recognize potholes as the reason why you blew out the tires on your car every day, then you get in your car every day and you drive right into potholes. And you're not aware that, oh, it's the hole in the road that's causing me to have a tire blowout. I talk about this in Quantum Tools to help you heal your life now. If you don't know, if you don't make the association to the pothole and the blown out tire, then you just keep blowing out your tire. And so it's really important that we recognize awareness is key. If you don't know that you've been in a narcissistic relationship, if you don't know that you've been codependent and living below the veil, how can you fix it? So it's really important that you understand this awareness piece. If you don't recognize that you have been in a narcissistic relationship and that you have been living below the veil of consciousness, if you don't recognize that, and if you don't see the power in that awareness, in that awakening moment, you might get stuck feeling like a victim. And again, I'll say it again. The reason we feel like victims is because we were victimized. But we don't want to get stuck there. We want to use this as an opportunity to appreciate the contrast, that I was living an illusionary life. I am codependent because of this, and I ended up in this type of relationship because of this. Or I was manipulated and I was sucked into this illusionary world. And think about the times in which your guidance system, your internal guidance system prompted you, that doesn't really feel right, or I think he's lying, or that can't be true, or I don't like the way she's speaking to you. And how many times do we in our lifetime ignore that little feeling, that intuition that's trying to help us awaken? That's the whole purpose of your intuition. It's to help you awaken. So the benefit of contrast is really what's going to promote you and help you move forward. So I feel that it's important for us to recognize that a narcissistic relationship and the pain that we experience, and how many of us experience our first spiritual awakening through a painful experience. The opportunity for a spiritual awakening after a narcissistic relationship is really optimal. It is an opportunity for you to break down the illusions of your life. It's an opportunity for you to look within. It's an opportunity for you to get real with yourself. When you are in a relationship with a narcissist, oftentimes we are people, and I'm speaking for myself, we are people that feel separate from the self. As a codependent, for instance, if you are other focused, then you will attract someone into your life who is self-focused, and that will feel natural to you. And you won't always recognize that there is a separation between you and self. How could there be, or how could it be any other way? If you are codependent and it's tied to childhood emotional neglect, that is because you and your parent, or the people supposed to take care of you, there was separation between you and your parent. They couldn't reach you. They didn't attune themselves to you. So what happened? You had to attune yourself to them. And in attuning yourself to them, this opportunity to attune to self was lost. If mothers and fathers and caretakers do a good enough job, then their attunement to their own selves, then they, from that perspective, from that position, they're able to help you feel seen. And helping you feel seen allows you to connect this concept of self. So you have this connection to self. There's less separation between you and self. The more codependent you are, then the less connected to self that you are. And let's face it, this is something that we're all striving for, whether we're codependent or not, is to feel connected with oneself and to be able to be who we are in the 3D world and claim it even when our knees are shaking. And to have the courage to say, this is what I think, to have the courage to have an opinion, even when other people attack our opinion, to be able to stand there and hold our position, even though we're not gaining the validation, the recognition that we have yearned for our entire life. So a spiritual awakening is about reducing the separation between you and the self. So in a relationship with a narcissist, you have been separated from the self, acquiescing to the needs of a narcissist inside their illusionary world. So you are not connected to the self, nor is the narcissist, but you don't know it. And so when you get kicked out or spit out of a narcissistic relationship and you're reeling with, oh my God, this was all future faking. Oh my God, I was just a source of narcissistic supply. You begin to realize that the narcissist paying attention to you helped you feel seen, but it was a pseudo sense of feeling seen. It wasn't real. It was all an illusion. And here is an opportunity for you to recognize that and say, whoa, wait a minute, what's going on here? And it's an opportunity for you then to spend some time trying to dissolve the separation between you and the self. It's a sacred, sacred opportunity for you to look within, for you to heal yourself, for you to merge with the divine self, so that you are less prone to narcissistic relationships that want to drag you into an illusionary world. As you begin to awaken, you have an opportunity. It's a very small window for you to ask yourself, what do I do now? Do I keep looking within, or do I shut the window and just jump right back into another relationship? Do I blame the narcissist? Do I blame my parents? What am I going to do now? Or am I going to try to figure out how I ended up in this situation in the first place? I felt after my divorce that I had a fake spiritual awakening, or I had a pseudo spiritual awakening. It was a false awakening. And it was a dangerous time because I thought I knew something. And a few more relationships down the line after my divorce, I realized that what I thought I knew, I didn't know. And so I would say that I've had a series of spiritual awakenings, recognizing, oh my God, I'm codependent. Where have I been? Like, where have I been? I had no idea there was a thing called abandonment trauma. I had no idea how my grandparents' alcoholism had affected my parents, and my father's gambling affected my mother, and her codependency on him and his narcissism. Had no idea. I was living in an illusionary world. I had no idea I was living below the veil of consciousness. And through this very painful experience of the divorce, I had an opportunity to say, whoa, it's not just my ex-husband, it was me. I'm codependent. I'm seeking validation, and I'm angry because I can't gain the sense of self that I want. I'm married to someone who is designed to not hear me. And no matter what I do, it's just not good enough. And I'm on this hamster's wheel and nothing's changing. What's the definition of insanity? Doing the same thing every day and expecting a different result. But I was so below the veil of consciousness, I didn't realize it. So realizing or being diagnosed with codependency was the initial awareness. And that's when I began to really question, who am I? That's when I began to realize that thoughts and feelings are not the same thing. That's when I began to realize that, oh my God, it's not me, it's my programming. I was programmed to be this person because of my childhood. It could be no other way. And I thought I was pretty clever. I thought I knew a lot at that time. But I didn't realize that it wasn't just the relationship that was codependent. I was codependent. So a few more relationships down the line, one more painful than the last, and the last relationship that brought me to my knees was when I began to realize that I needed to really keep going. There were questions I still wasn't answering within myself or even asking. And the last question that I asked myself before I really took off was, what are you still ignoring? And the answer was, you still ignore red flags. And so as much as I knew about codependency, as much as I was learning about narcissism, I was still ignoring red flags. My intuition was still telling me, listen, Lisa, listen, Lisa, listen. But there was still something inside of me, some growing that I needed to do that I hadn't yet done. And that's why I kept ending up in these painful situations. And so the awakening, spiritual awakenings happen over time. And it's not just a major event, or it could be a major event, but there will be other events in your life that will cause you to deeply awaken. The goal of a spiritual awakening is to help you dissolve your ego. So what are the signs that you're actually awakening? The benefit of a spiritual awakening as it relates to narcissism and waking up from that relationship is recognizing that you are enough. Recognizing that you don't want to hold on to anger and animosity. If you're someone who is even thankful or can be like grateful, like, oh my gosh, this relationship taught me so much about myself, so much I'm never going back, that's amazing. But that's a sign of a spiritual awakening. This idea that you're experiencing more joy in your life, more bliss in your life, this idea that you're not holding on to the past, this idea that you are in acceptance of all of it. You're in acceptance. That when I say acceptance, I don't mean that you are okay with the fact that you were in a dysfunctional home as a child and whatever happened to you happened to you. What I'm saying is that you accept that something took place that you cannot change. So you're not holding on to what happened to you. You are willing to transcend it. You're willing to move forward. And willingness is a big piece of the puzzle when it comes to healing. You have to be willing to want to change. And so we can get stuck in feeling like a victim from childhood, feeling victimized by a narcissist, and we can get stuck there. And there's a lot of safety there, because as long as I remain in this place, then I don't have to step out of that space and try again. It's scary to try again. It really is. But the goal is to be able to heal so deeply on the inside that we are galvanized, that we merge with the self, that we accept the lower selves. We accept the parts of ourselves that weren't so conscious. We literally accept them. We integrate them. And we accept from a higher state of awareness that all of these past self-experiences have brought us to where we are today. And all of the people that have participated in our lives have helped us grow in one way or another. And we're willing to look at our past with a sense of surrender and non-resistance. So another sign that you are experiencing a spiritual awakening is non-resistance to the past. You are someone that doesn't want to hold on to it anymore. The only reason that you want to learn about narcissism is so that you recognize traits in people that you can avoid. And you also might want to recognize traits of narcissism for yourself so that you can recognize when maybe you're falling into reactivity and you can keep yourself in check. If you are rising in emotional intelligence, if your ability to be self-accountable without experiencing so much shame. In other words, like, yeah, I did this, yeah, that's my experience, but I'm not carrying shame about it anymore because it could be no other way. I recognize that that time in my life represented a time when I was less conscious, when I was living below the veil of consciousness, as all human beings do until they start having these spiritual awakenings. So these are just some of the signs that you're actually experiencing a spiritual awakening. And it is my sincere hope that if you have found yourself in a tough narcissistic relationship and you have been kicked out of it, it is my hope that you use the benefit of contrast to come into alignment with what you really want. Being with a narcissist and then ending the relationship is an opportunity for you to relish in that contrast and say, no way, I don't want that again. That's what I did when I was getting kicked out of these relationships. I used all of the contrast to allow me to figure out, and I wrote it out on paper, what I did not want versus what I did want. Because sometimes when we're highly codependent, we don't know what we want. We just know what we don't want. We've never had the experience of having someone who is totally healthy, emotionally regulated, ask us, what do you want? Our needs just haven't been important to other people. So we don't have that data for how to ask ourselves, what do we want? But we run our lives in reverse. Like, I don't want that. I don't want you to do that. I don't want you to do that. I hate when you do that. I don't like when you do that. I don't like this. I don't like that. And our spouses are sometimes like, well, what do you want? And we don't even realize that we don't know what we want. We just think that if we anticipate the needs of our spouse, they'll just naturally anticipate our needs. That's dysfunctional. That's like kindergarten, right? That's how people behave in kindergarten. But adults know what they need, or healthy adults know what they need, and they're able to express what they need. And they know that their partners have needs, and they want their partners to express what they need. And they know that it's about reciprocal relationships. It's not about just the one in the relationship. Healthy adults can actually see the needs of the other person and vice versa. It's a beautiful thing. It's the yin and the yang. It's a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful experience once you get it right. But it takes us time, especially if we come from dysfunctional homes. It takes us time. And before we can experience the love of another person, and before we can accept someone who is flawed and love them anyway, we have to do that within the self. And that is one of the benefits of getting kicked out of a narcissistic relationship. The contrast can help us identify what it is that we want, what is true for us. It's painful because we've had the experience of exactly what we don't want. We don't feel seen. We haven't been loved. This isn't fair. We don't feel good enough. And now here's the opportunity for us to awaken and recognize this is an illusion. The narcissist lives in a grandiose theater where they are center stage. You are an actor in their play, and it's painful to recognize it. But in this situation, is an opportunity is to devour the contrast and say, no more, never again. And what are you going to do when you get kicked out of a narcissistic relationship? Are you going to use the contrast to your advantage? That's a very serious question to ask you. And every time you have a spiritual awakening, it could be you recognizing that you drink too much, right? Maybe you get a DUI. Maybe you end up in jail for the night. Maybe your girlfriend leaves you or your boyfriend leaves you. Or maybe you lose your job as a nurse or a doctor because you're abusing the drugs in the hospital. These are moments that are very, very painful, and they offer us contrast. If we're addicted to people, if we're addicted to chemicals, it's an illusion. We're not living the life that we're meant to live. And so here is an opportunity for us to use this contrast, for us to stop kidding ourselves, to awaken, and to come into alignment with what is true for us. I really hope that this has been beneficial. And if any of you are interested in learning more about how you can recover from codependency and live above the veil of consciousness, check out the 12-week Breakthrough Codependency program. It's essentially a 12-week codependency boot camp. It's essentially a 12-week Breakthrough Codependency boot camp, and you can work with me and my team of life coaches online. Namaste, everybody. Don't live a reactive life. Know that you can create the life that you desire if you can use the benefit of contrast in your life to your advantage. You're stronger than you think. Namaste, everybody. Until next time. If you love this content, don't forget to check out the next video, and you can go to my website and take the codependency quiz.